Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 697 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day, is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, and it is a lovely day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver Ray, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? It's so lovely to see you. I'm doing well. Not as well rested as I was yesterday. Didn't get as many hours, but right now I'm not feeling it. So that's pretty good. Probably will need a nap later. But otherwise, in good spirits. Some news for you, kids and cubs. Unfortunately, um, uh, for us, Mr. Grizzly got his schedule, and it's not as we thought it would be, where he would be having to leave at 7:30 in the morning and be able to join us for the first half hour. It seems that he now will be starting work at 6. So we have to figure out a way for him to still be able to participate in the show. It will probably be by recording some things and us finding a way to play segments with him, giving his take on certain issues of the day within the show. Um, we might have to look at other things as well. Who knows in the future? But at the moment, that's sort of the way that we are looking at doing things. We still have to figure out how technically to do all of that, of course. And then, of course, Mr. Grizzly, life happens. Doing this first thing in the morning is a little easier than after the whole day is done, and you know, things happen in the day where it turns out that you have to do more things, and sometimes it's not always possible to get out and record something. And often, when you're recording something, you're going to do a few more takes rather than when we do live. If we make a mistake, we make a mistake, right? And we roll with it. But on a recording, sometimes you want it to be a little more polished, and you do several takes. So which could be a little more time consuming. So, but we will try to find a way. Mr. Grizzly has not left the show, has not left the venture in any way, shape, or form. Of course, we're all very happy that he's got this job, because it does seem to be in a place that he has high optimism that it will be a good place, but also because he's finally being paid what he's worth, and that's always a good thing. And Mr. Grizzly works very, very, very hard and deserves some good things. So we're happy for him. But it does change things around here. Like I said, not sure if that means Eventually, we will not be a morning show in terms of live in order to have them both on to have both of us on the show or something. And we will still broadcast live in the morning, but have to pre-record in the evenings. We don't know exactly how the things will progress moving forward. But right now, we're going to look at trying the option of Mr. Grizzly recording some segments that we can bring to you during the show and see how that works for the next while. Said we're growing, we're adjusting. Life happens. We get thrown curveballs, and yeah, you got to roll with it. So this is this is us rolling with it. Of course, this is much more fun and much easier when I have Mr. Grizzly, which is why I'm considering perhaps maybe changing recording time. Thinking, if that's a possibility, we might have to look at the future in order because a solo show is good, um, but having the interaction with Mr. Grizzly, I personally believe makes the show better. So, and I don't really want to lose that in a certain way. So, hopefully, we'll find some ways to be able to keep that within the show. But for the moment, we are absolutely 100% behind Mr. Grizzly and fully supportive of his new venture. And and it's up to us to find a way to make it work, and we will. We will. But for those of you who need your daily dose of grizzly, for the moment, you might have to be a little patient, unfortunately. But said, we're creative and we're clever little creatures, so we'll figure it out. All right, let's see. Who do we have with us this morning? Good morning, Kit Elaine. Hello, my dear one. Hello, Kit Saucy. Hope you are doing well. Hope everyone's doing well. Kit PNC Bio. Hello. Nice to see you. Glad you can join us this morning. Kit Linda M, the original and the best. Not sure if you weren't there only for the beginning of the show and came in later, but I missed not being able to say hello to you yesterday morning. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Kit Nona Carol, hi, how are you? Lovely to see you. And I'm hopefully going to be trying my hand at a tiramisu soon, Nona. So if you've got any tips, I would certainly love them. I was able to find some gluten-free lady fingers, so I'm planning to make one. So yeah, any tips you have, they're most welcome because I would like it to turn out well. Can't believe how expensive mascarpone is. Oh my word. Kit Kat W. Good morning to you. So nice to see you. Thank you for joining us, as well as you too, Kit Uncover, always on duty for us and doing wonderful things and spreading the good word. Thank you so much for all of your help. Who else do we have? Kit Tom. Hey, good morning. Nice to see you with us. Hope you're doing well. Kit Cassie. Hello, dear one. Hope you say hello to everybody out there for me. And if you didn't hear us say it, congratulations to you and the cowboy on 30 years. I hope that your celebrations were full of love and laughter and all the good stuff, and wishing you at least 30 more. So we love here at the Beaver Lodge. Good morning, Kit Grace. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. I think you're a relatively new name for me, but I have seen you in the chat a couple of times, and glad you're here. Glad I get to say hello to you in the morning. And who else do we have? I think that's everyone we have at the moment sliding in. And there you go. So on with the show, kits and cups. The show title today, Tonal Shifts, because there's been a lot of people, there's a lot going on. A lot of people have been coming to town to visit, and a lot of people have been going out of town to visit, and a lot of people have been uh, trying to mark some territory here. So today we are going to go through 4 people, hopefully, or groups of people, if we have the time, that are trying to establish some type of tonal shift and look at whether or not they have done them well or not. And hopefully, if we have time for a little more news, because I've got some. We can get into something having to do with wildfires because there was an update given that was very important. So hopefully we'll have a chance to go through all of that. Yesterday it didn't get a lot of press, but there was a visit we had some royalty in town, believe it or not. Uh, King His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan was in town to visit with the Prime Minister. It was their first in-person meeting since the Prime Minister took office, and based on the readout that the PMO has put out. It says Prime Minister Carney welcomed His Majesty King Abdullah II to Ottawa. The leaders underscored long-standing partnership between Canada and Jordan, including in trade, defense, and security. They discussed opportunities to strengthen bilateral commerce and investment as Canada diversifies its trade partners and builds a stronger economy. To that end, Prime Minister Carney announced that Canada will allocate $28.4 million to support border security and development efforts in Jordan. This includes helping Jordan's security forces protect against terrorism and transnational crime, using Canadian steel to repair border infrastructure, and reducing global pressures by assisting with education, health, and job creation for refugees. The Prime Minister and His Majesty also discussed the situation in the Middle East, including the imperative of a ceasefire in Gaza, called for urgent life saving humanitarian aid to reach civilians, and the imperative for stability in Syria. His Majesty King Abdullah II thanked Prime Minister Carney for his hospitality, and the leaders looked forward to remaining in close contact. So that's what happened with that. There was some your typical images of them, standing side by side and all that kind of stuff that was out there. Um, we can get a picture of that to you here. There we go. Better yet, we have a little bit of video of him arriving at Parliament. Canada has good relationships with Jordan as a country traditionally. So there's no reason to assume that things weren't warm and that warm. Uh, you know, Lots of pictures of them walking. And yeah, that's always clearly in this when it comes to the Middle East at the moment, because things are a little bit well, a little bit or a big hot mess out there. So it's good to be able to connect with some of our stronger allies in the region, and hopefully, uh, I believe that was a little bit of extra news when it comes to what's going on in Syria with regards to Canada. I think they joined. There was some news in the Canadian press that said that Canada joined 24 nations calling on Israel to end war in Gaza, and to put an end to the aid restrictions that some people on the international scene are saying that is uh, they're coming that the aid is being delivered like they were droplets. uh, you know that situation there is absolutely horrible. According to the Canadian press, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand and 24 of her counterparts abroad have signed a joint statement saying the war in Gaza must end now, while calling on Israel to stop displacing Palestinians. The signatories, who include the Foreign Minister of France, Japan, the UK, and the European Union Commissioner for Equality, Preparedness, and Crisis Management, called Israel's aid distribution system, quote, dangerous. The ministers also condemned Hamas for continuing to hold hostage captured from Israel in the October 7th, 2023 attack, and called for their immediate release. They said, quote, it's horrifying that over 800 Palestinians have been killed while seeking aid. That death toll is based on figures released by UN Human Rights Office and the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. Quote, the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached new depths. The Israeli government's aid delivery model is dangerous, fuels instability, and deprives Gazans of human dignity. We condemn the drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children seeking to meet their most basic needs of water and food, the ministers wrote. And that was the term, sorry, when I said droplets, drip feeding was the term there that I was trying to refer to. Um, in diplomatic speak, this is pretty tough, even though in the real world, this ends up being words. And, well, we know that the leader of Israel is not listening to anyone, really, at all anymore. So uh, you have to say the words and you have to make the attempt and you have to try to put on the pressure. I'm just not sure how much this is actually mattering, really, to be totally honest here. The ministers decry proposals by Israeli officials to concentrate Palestinians in Gaza into one city. Quote, permanent forced displacement is a violation of international humanitarian law, the statement notes. It also takes aim at the Israeli government's proposed expansion of settlements in the Palestinian territories it occupies, particularly as it seeks to divide the West Bank from East Jerusalem. This would, quote, critically undermine the two-state solution, the statement said, noting an increase in the building of settlements that Canada deems illegal at a time when, quote, settler violence against Palestinians has soared. Oren Marmestein, spokesman for Israel's Foreign Affairs Ministry, said Israel rejects the joint statement. See, there you go. Calling it, quote, disconnected from reality and saying it sends the wrong message to Hamas. Quote, the statement fails to focus the pressure on Hamas and fails to recognize Hamas's role and responsibility for the situation. Hamas is the sole party responsible for the continuation of the war and the suffering on both sides, Marmestein wrote in a social media statement. At these sensitive moments in the ongoing negotiations, it is better to avoid statements of this kind. The thing is, I'm not sure how Hamas's involvement makes it such that they have to deliver humanitarian aid as drip feed. And what seems to be happening is using these types of humanitarian aid distribution systems as a manner to draw out some people so they can be more easily killed. Maybe there is something else going on, and we're not privy to it, but it's walking like a duck and it's talking like a duck, and it looks bad. Israel is not looking good here, and these there's no wonder why countries are bringing cases to the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, and that there's this international pressure. But again, it doesn't seem that any of it is mattering right now. It seems that the current government of Israel has put its head down and has decided it's going to do what it is going to do, regardless of what anybody has to say, unless somebody stops them in some type of more forceful way. And there does not seem to be, unfortunately, enough will, I guess, to take the next step if people are really serious about wanting this aid to be properly delivered and for this war to stop. So at the moment, we just keep going around in circles. The ministers who signed the statement are calling on the Israeli government to lift all restrictions on aid delivery and to, quote, enable the UN and humanitarian NGOs to do their work safely and effectively. Most of the food supplies Israel has allowed into Gaza go to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an American contractor backed by Israel. Witnesses and health officials say that since the group's operations began in late May, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed by Israeli army fire while trying to reach aid distribution sites. So that's the problem here, is that the food aid is no longer being delivered by internationally recognized non-government organizations, but by a private American contractor that Israel has chosen. And well, we've seen what's been happening since. Israel has blocked aid for 3 months before setting up GHF sites, effectively shutting down hundreds of sites that had been operated by international agencies across Gaza. Israel says it had to take this step to prevent aid from reaching Hamas, which had been selling vital supplies and food to pay its fighters. But UN agencies say this was not happening to a large extent. While the United States, Qatar, and Egypt did not sign the letter, the ministers who did sign say they support the efforts of those three countries to negotiate a ceasefire. In addition to the US, Germany was the only other G7 country that did not endorse the statement. The signatories added they are prepared to take further action to support an immediate ceasefire and establish a political pathway to peace in the region. So, and I'm sure discussions about that arose as well with King Abdullah II of Jordan while the Prime Minister was there with him. We also received more visitors, this time from the United States, kits and cubs. Four senators came, two from the Democratic Party, two um, from the Republican Party. And again, they came to talk to and with the Prime Minister. Um, about the current situation going on with the United States. Um, you know, as you know, because you're Canadians, there's one particular person, and he has a lot of help from members of his party, who's been trying to make life uh, very miserable for us. Very, very, very miserable for us. Um, and we also have, conversely, a lot of Americans who do not support this president, who do not support the actions that are being done, making appeals to us. Lately, for example, there was a town in Vermont that renamed a street Canada Street, and posted pictures all over as a way to try to get us to come, and say like, please, come back. But it's like, listen, we don't have a problem with you, Vermont. We don't have a problem with the very nice people that happen to be living in the United States who are indeed our friends and like us and are appalled by what's going on. But we don't know what happens to us after we cross the border. There's no guarantee we'll be safe. I mean, again, it's very sweet and very nice that you want us to come back. And, this other people more cynically will go, yes, I understand capitalism. You're losing money. You want us back. Big deal. But let's just assume the best of intentions here, right? It's very sweet and very nice that you would want us back. But unless you do something about guy that's putting the orders that people can just be picked up and, you know, put in detention or even sent to a third country, uh, renaming a street Canada Street it's not going to cut it. I mean, sorry, but we're staying home. We're traveling elsewhere. It just is, right? There seems to be, um, there doesn't seem to be the realization that what's going on is not like, we're not just upset at the United States because they took three of the four sticks in a Kit Kat bar and left us with just one, right? That you can get over with, "Oh, I'm sorry," and some flowers and maybe dinner. Th This is not, it's on a whole other level. There just doesn't seem to be some recognition that we're talking about our own personal safety. Someone who said he wants to annex us, and somebody who's openly said that he wants to destroy our auto manufacturing industry and our steel industry. Some guy who wants to absolutely create massive economic damage and radically change our way of life. There just doesn't seem to be a recognition that this is not just a spat. This is an existential moment. But four senators, Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican representing the state of Alaska, Ron Wyden, Democrat representing the state of Oregon, Catherine Cortez Mastro, Democrat representing the state of Nevada, and Maggie Hassan, a Democrat representing the border state of New Hampshire, said that their aim was to signal congressional support for a resolution to ongoing trade disputes, particularly within the framework of the US Mexico Canada Agreement. The delegation is part of the powerful Senate Committee on Finance and is led by ranking member Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, as we mentioned earlier. The senators discussed a wide range of issues with Prime Minister Mark Carney behind closed doors for 45 minutes in his office. Senator Wyden did say that tariffs were central to the discussion, with the cost to consumers being the biggest concern. Quote, "We made it clear that on a bipartisan basis, we want to work with all sides of the executive branch in both countries to get some stability back in the economy in the United States and in Canada," Senator Wyden told reporters following the meeting. And this is according to reporting by Noah at CTV. Sorry, here I have a little bit of an itchy eye there. Um, At issue, of course, are mounting trade irritants between Canada and the US, including disputes over dairy, digital services, clean energy incentives, and softwood lumber. The Canada US softwood lumber trade relationship has dealt with ups and downs for decades. Canadian exporters are concerned as the US threatens to more than double softwood lumber duties and add even steeper tariffs under a national security investigation. Quote, I think we now have a clear idea of how to proceed, and that's to build around some sort of quota arrangement, said Wyden, who chairs the Senate Finance Committee. And the Prime Minister said he was open to that, so lots to work on. And BC Premier David Eby as well seems to be talking about quotas now, that it looks inevitable that we're going to be moving to that type of system. Wyden also notes signs of progress in the discussion, saying both sides appeared open to, quote, constructive solutions. Senator Cortez Masto emphasized the importance of maintaining the USMCA, which came into effect in 2020. Quote, there traditionally has been that great partnership with Canada, and for that reason, as the member of the Senate Finance, I do think it is important we reinvigorate the USMCA and work within the confines of the agreement that we've already negotiated. Murkowski echoed that sentiment, saying, I think this is yet another aspect of what we're trying to do today to reinforce these relationships to ensure that going forward, we see good reforms to the USMCA. Carney described the meeting as, quote, good, and did not offer additional comment. Hmm. How was the meeting? Good. Anything else? No. Ooh, that sounds a lot. The delegation also attended meetings with Dominic LeBlanc, Minister responsible for Canada-US trade, as well as Industry Minister Mélanie Joly, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand. When asked by CTV News outside his office on the potential of reaching a deal with LeBlanc, sorry, I'm not actually, the sentence is really weird. When asked by CTV News outside his office on the potential of reaching a deal with LeBlanc, said he was hopeful. There seems to be a word missing in there here. Sorry. The visit comes just days before the July 31st deadline for USMCA dispute consultations, adding urgency to efforts on both sides of the border to reach a path forward. According to a readout from the Prime Minister's office, senior officials, including his new Chief of Staff, Marc-André Blanchard, were in Washington last week, quote, to advance negotiations. LeBlanc is expected to head back to the U.S. Capitol to continue that work this week. And then, of course, the subject of 51st State comes up again, and they were asked about this. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Senator Lee was the first to opine on it.
Murkowski, if I could just ask you, you mentioned you're the 49th. You don't want to sort of move down that list. You want to respect the borders. How do you explain the rhetoric that we continue to hear from the from the president, and how do you explain to Republicans now what Canadians feel, and do you think you can help sort of turn the tide to maybe get more people on your side of the border?
I cannot explain President Trump's rhetoric about the 51st state.
Really?
That is his statement, but I think it has been made very, very clear that most view that as nothing more than a positioning statement, if you will, something to maybe agitate. I don't think that that's constructive, quite honestly. Certainly here in Canada, you can sense that there is a direct hostility, if you will, to that suggestion. So my advice to the president, not that he will take it willingly, is that constructive dialogue is going to be what reinforces this long-standing relationship between these two countries, where you have a 5,000-mile border, where you have shared interests, shared values. So suggesting things that you know are really not within the realm of the possible are not necessarily.
So hold on one sec so I can just add. 4 senators here, both political parties spent the morning working to build bridges, not throw wrenches.
Oh, there you go. Cats and Cubs. they're doing what they can do in more symbolism. I saw it in the chat there. But yes, they showed up wearing Canada US friendship bracelets. Again, a nice symbol, but there are 55 Canadians currently being detained by ICE, at least. I'm not sure how that helps them. And I'm not sure how it prevents a 56th or 57th from taking place. Right. Uh, again, understand the sentiment, coming to build bridges, not throw wrenches. Lisa Murkowski, I can't explain what the president. Yeah, I know you can't explain, but you still voted for his big, beautiful bill, didn't you? Lisa Murkowski in particular, because if you remember, we didn't cover it all that much, but it passed because there's a group of people um, in the Republicans Senate that keep on saying that they oppose, but somehow always manage to count the votes in such a way that whatever Donald Trump passes while signaling their opposition. Susan Collins is one of them. She frequently has to take a visit to the hospital because she pulls an orbital muscle from all the straining her eyebrow, furrowing it with concern. But doesn't really do anything about it. When the big, beautiful bill passed, Lisa Murkowski got certain exemptions that would not apply, that would apply only to her state, and then voted for all the crap to happen to the 49 others to allow Trump to have the win. I mean, talk about principled opposition, right? So, yes, she can't explain. Yes, he's probably not going to listen to her. But you're also the wrong messenger. We've seen what you did. We've seen what you did. You don't stand up to him. So I'm not sure why you're coming here if you're not prepared to do the work over there. It just seems like a waste of our time, really. And, we're Canadian, we're polite. We hosted, we heard them. But as the Prime Minister said, the meeting was good. Sans plus. Nothing more, nothing less. I mean, bless their hearts for reaching out, but I mean, this is not it. This is not it. It's not enough. It's not sufficient. It's not even anywhere near the ballpark. I you can't give up trying. I get that. You can't give up trying because when you give up trying, you lose. But it just feels like the target is 50 meters away, and we're pitching underhanded, trying to get 1/3 of the way down the field only, right? If you're not prepared, you know, if you're not prepared to actually, put some elbow and some shoulder into it when you're making the pitch, why are we doing this for? Right? I know. I'm being a little cynical there. I'm being a little cynical. I know, and not my usual optimistic self, but I'm an impatient optimist, right? So I'm okay with doing the niceties and the pleasantries and going through all the steps and all the phases and all that like this, but it has to be getting somewhere, and we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting anywhere, and there's nowhere to get. It seems with this guy, because even if we get somewhere, then the question is, how long does this last? And as well as being an impatient optimist, I'm more of an I'll believe it when it lasts kind of guy. Because I believe in positive reinforcement. Say, okay, you're on the right track. Let's keep going. But I believe it when it lasts, not when it's just promised and not when it's seemingly performative. Right? And I have no doubt that these four definitely have good feelings towards us and would like the situation to be better. I'm just not sure what they're prepared to do constructively and meaningfully to make that happen. Moving on to another attempt at tonal shift. Danielle Smith, Miss Sourpuss herself, as we reported yesterday, had demanded that the town of Jasper deliver an apology to her because a routine run-of-the-mill post-disaster report which sought to assess the response and find out if there were any gaps, any overlaps, any things that were missed, things that could be shored up so that the next time there is a wildfire, and there will be a next time because now we have a wildfire season every damn year, and big ones. Sometimes big enough to have some people from the United States send us letters saying, "Hey, Canada, can you keep the smoke down there?" Right? Just, God, that woman. She's poison. So she didn't get her apology, but it seems that the town of Jasper did do or say something, which prompted Danielle Smith to put out a tweet that says, "We appreciate that the town of Jasper has clarified the intent of their recovery report and acknowledged that it was never intended to be critical of the province's contributions. In their statement, the municipality of Jasper is clear that they recognize and value the essential role that the province played, both during the response and throughout the recovery process. This includes the deploying of wildfire response teams, delivering emergency financial assistance, and helping restore critical infrastructure and services. We share their concerns about how some media outlets chose to misrepresent and politicize the content and tone of the report. Our focus remains on working to build a stronger, more resilient future for Jasper and all Albertans affected by wildfires." Yeah. You will notice here that Danielle Smith, in her framing of this, "Oh my God, I'm glad everything is better" type thing, still seems to be putting responsibility on the town of Jasper for not having been clear about the intent of the report. And nobody was unclear about the intent of the report. Not even the provincial government, whose views were sought in putting together this report. Now, let's look at what the municipality of Jasper stated. "The municipality of Jasper would like to address the public narrative with respect to our recently released After Action Review and highlight the province of Alberta's valued and ongoing contributions to our community. This review focuses narrowly on the municipality's emergency planning framework and its role during the event, particularly its participation within the incident management team and the unified command structure. It was not designed or intended to assess the independent actions of the province of Alberta, nor does it reflect the province's contributions to our community's ongoing recovery. These important areas are outside the municipality's jurisdiction and fall beyond the scope of the review. The AAR, which is the After Action Review, is not a political document. It is a learning tool intended to identify what worked well, where there were gaps, and how emergency coordination can be strengthened. The report includes 27 practical recommendations, some within the municipality's direct control and others calling for collaboration across agencies and orders of government. We take exception to the politicization of the After Action Review and its observations, especially in the media. Jasper is committed to transparency and constructive reflection, and we believe emergency response deserves thoughtful dialogue, not division. Unfortunately, much of the recent media coverage has narrowly focused on a single sentence within a 50-page report. That isolated passage does not reflect the broader findings or the spirit of the After Action Review. The report acknowledges numerous areas of success and highlights the essential contributions of Alberta Wildfire, AEMA, and other provincial agencies. It offers a wide range of practical recommendations aimed at strengthening coordination across all levels of government. We are also proud to recognize the province of Alberta's essential role during the response and throughout our recovery. Alberta Wildfire, AEMA, and many other provincial agencies provided critical support that helped protect lives and infrastructure. Their contributions were key to stabilizing the situation and enabling local efforts, and the AEMA is the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. And then basically it says the following are examples of support provided by the province of Alberta during and after the event. And then in total, Alberta's government has invested over $181 million to support Jasper's recovery. So all the stuff afterwards, which was not part of the report, Danielle Smith in her little snit says, why didn't you talk about all the stuff that we did after to help? Because the stuff that you did after to help has nothing to do with the response during the fire. It's not that all the good stuff that you were doing had been done was left out. It's just it wasn't part of the scope of the review. Period. And then they mentioned that the support has continued, and all that kind of stuff. But it seems here, when I'm reading this, that either there was somebody from Danielle Smith's office that called the town of Jasper and said, you need to do something or else, or that a lot of this was written by Danielle Smith herself or her team, and there was some suggested wording here. Now, yes, it is true that the media coverage narrowly focused on a single sentence of the 50-page report because that single sentence happened to say that the government of Alberta, for a certain period of time, repeatedly tried to exercise jurisdictional leadership and control in a situation where they had none. That is a big deal. And that resources had to be diverted to answering their questions rather than focusing on the response. That is a big deal. Now, ultimately, how much damage did it do? How much did it delay? Were there consequences? The report didn't assess that. The report just said that in the future, when there's a wildfire in a national park, when the lead jurisdiction is that of Parks Canada or the government in Canada in line with the municipality and not the province, as it usually is in every other situation, that the province needs to know its place and behave accordingly. And that in this case, it did not happen. And then all the extra ink and bandwidth came with the fact that Danielle Smith, in that statement where she got all sourpussy and stomped her little foot and acted like the varicosalt of politics, I don't care how you make it better, but you just make it better and you make it better now. I want an apology. Yeah. Lied. She lied. She outright lied about when there was involvement, how much involvement. She lied. Our friends at the breakdown proved it yesterday when we showed you that clip. She just outright lied. So now the town of Jasper puts this out. Of course, blame the media for having focused on one sentence. Yes, the media focused on that one sentence, but every single report that I saw in the media also said that this was an issue that was relatively quickly resolved. And once everybody finally resolved the jurisdictional issues, everything else happened with great operability or with great ease. Every report that I read in the media specifically was very clear on what the intent of the report was. So you have Danielle Smith sauntering into the room after the town of Jasper puts that out and says, "We appreciate that the town of Jasper has clarified the intent of their recovery report as if it ever was unclear in the first place. And we share their concerns about how some of the media outlets, so then joining with them against the big bad media, they attacked us. We can't believe that the media framed it this way. They didn't misrepresent or politicize the content. They highlighted the fact that the provincial government, in a time of emergency management, was trying to exert jurisdictional control in a spot where they didn't have one, and seemingly on enough occasions and enough time that enough people noticed it because of all the people they consulted in this response. And then there was a whole one-day workshop. They got all this data, and it was repeated over and over and over again by on-the-ground crisis managers and people fighting the fire and doing whatever else needed to be done to respond. A lot of them seeming to indicate that there was a problem there. So that's not a misrepresentation. It's not politicization. Is it, yes, as the town of Jasper said, taking one sentence of a report and focusing on it? Yes. But it's a pretty big sentence because overall the report is saying that the response was pretty good. The evacuation was exceptional. Once everybody was clear on jurisdictional lines, everything happened with ease and operability. So there wasn't all that much that went wrong. There's a couple of things that you can learn from. But that's it. Anything that delays a response is a big deal. It is a big deal. It would not be odd or out of the ordinary for the media to focus on that. That was the thing that stuck out in that whole report. But nobody reported on that while not also saying the other side, that once things were clear, that everything went well. So yeah, Danielle Smith, she's the one that had a meltdown. She was the only one who seemed to not be aware of what the intent of the report was, whether that was on purpose or because she just wasn't present enough or she just saw something criticizing her government and she just lost it. But she had a meltdown. She had a tantrum. She lost mastery of herself. And it seems it was up to the town of Jasper to fix it for her and to clean up her mess. And then once they did that, she took it and once again made herself the victim. Well, gee, thank you so much, Jasper, for having cleared that up, and bad media for having politicized and misrepresented when neither of those things happened. They accurately represented and they highlighted the one element of the report that had neon lights flashing towards it and saying, whoa, wait a minute, they caused delays? It wasn't because the intent of the report was unclear. It's because you, Danielle Smith, are messy. So when the town of Jasper talks about the narrative out there, like this, the narrative out there, a good chunk of it was created by you, Danielle. But she never takes responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. Somebody else's mess to clean up. And somebody else's fault that she had to do what she did. My piss poor behavior was justified. No, it wasn't. Just that woman is poison. Ugh. Jeez. All right. Another attempt at a tonal shift. It would seem that there was an article that came out a few days ago. It was from J.P. Tasker of CBC, and he was explaining in this article how well, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have been talking about things needing to change, and that there have been tweaks on his tone and strategy. So this came out on July 18th by John at JP Tasker. Poilievre tweaks his tone and strategy as he faces must-win by-election leadership review. The Conservative leader is making changes, but he's keeping his senior advisor, Jenny Byrne, at least for now. And if you keep Jenny Byrne, you know there's going to be no change in tone. She's only had one tone since she first appeared on the scene. But anyway, J.P. Tasker writes, Pierre Poilievre was feeling dejected and disappointment after the stinging federal election loss in April. Oh, poor baby. Sources close to the Conservative leader said, and he dialed back his public appearances for the better part of 2 months to reassess his strategy and regroup. In other words, he was licking his wounds. After that period of self-reflection, which is not a thing with this guy, which was marked by private calls and visits with dozens of MPs, staff, and supporters, Poilievre is re-emerging from a relatively dormant period, ramping up his federal by-election campaign, weighing in publicly on perceived liberal missteps and speaking to the press. Quote, it's been hard on him, one Poilievre confidant who spoke to CBC News on the condition they not be named so they could speak freely about internal matters. All of us, we've had to eat some humble pie. Kids and Cubs, if you've been seeing the Conservatives behave out there since the election, has there been any evidence of anyone having had even a crumb of humble pie? Really? Another Conservative source who worked closely with Poilievre on the campaign said the leader has seemed, quote, deflated since the loss and has been lacking the chutzpah he was known for in the lead up to the national vote. To expand the potential pool of voters and beat Liberals next time, the leader and people around him now acknowledge that some things have to change, Conservative sources said. Poilievre, long known as the ultimate attack dog politician after spending much of his career on the opposition benches, has been more subdued at his recent public outings, including at his press conference with reporters on Monday. The sloganeering, once a staple of his political messaging, has been parked, at least for now. I haven't noticed much of that. Sorry. After avoiding national interviews with some traditional media for much of his leadership, Pierre Poilievre spoke to CBC's radio's The House last week. Yes, he gave the first interview in 3 years as a leader, but that's supposed to indicate a tonal shift. He needs the CBC now. It's the only reason he's there. He critiqued Prime Minister Mark Carney's handling of the Canada-US trade dispute, but also offered up some solutions, including a commitment to get more personally involved in the American outreach if asked. Throughout the campaign, the Tory leader said it wasn't his place to intervene, but all of a sudden it is, because during the campaign he said it wasn't his place to intervene because we only have one government of Canada at the time. But we still have one government of Canada at the time, and he's not it. But now all of a sudden he feels that he can intervene Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asked him in January to intervene. He actually called all the leaders of the opposition parties together in a very extraordinary meeting and asked them all to work their contacts. And Pierre decided he wasn't going to lift a finger. But now he's ready. Because that's a tonal shift. And not just opportunism, claiming that he's helping. He's not doing much. He's not doing much. He was asked point blank, and he can mention like 2 people he talked to or had people talk to, and that was about it. Poilievre said he didn't blame Carney entirely for the lack of progress on a trade deal. Quote, he's dealing with unfair treatment by the Americans, he told Catherine Cullen. So he's recognizing a little bit of reality. Apparently that's a tonal shift. Okay. One conservative source close to Poilievre said the shift in tone and temperament is deliberate. Poilievre himself acknowledged an election defeat as a chance to reassess, saying, quote, every election comes with lessons. He also suggested his leadership can't be tied to what the Liberals were doing. Quote, we need to present ourselves as a government in waiting, he said. Put a pin in that saying. We need to present ourselves as a government in waiting. As he told Calgary Stampede goers at his first major speech since the election earlier this month that he won't back down despite some of the challenges that lie ahead. Quote, we don't run away when things get hard. We dust ourselves off. We get back in the saddle. We gallop forward into the fight. One thing that is not changing is Poilievre's reliance on campaign advisor Jenny Byrne to help him navigate political choppy waters. Byrne, a controversial figure among some conservatives, has been close to Poilievre for years and managed the last election effort. The result she helped deliver on Election Day, one of the best Tory showings since the 1980s, is regarded by many within the party as respectable, but there are others who are deeply disappointed about letting what once looked like a certain victory slip away. Dimitri Sourpuss, a former senior staffer in ex-Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government who worked with Byrne while she was also in that office, is going public with his concerns about Poilievre's trusted advisor. In a social media post Thursday, Sourpuss said Byrne dropped the ball. Quote, as my party leader says, why should donors pay for failure, he wrote. The path to victory was obvious on January 8th, 2025. Fight, 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 fight. Rumors of Byrne's ouster circulated in Ottawa this week, but a source close to the strategist said she's not going anywhere, and that Byrne and Poilievre are speaking often. A Conservative Party spokesperson confirmed she is still working for the party. Yeah, mainly they can't get rid of her because she knows where all the bodies are. And given the type of person she is, she wouldn't bat an eyelash if she was asked to leave, then turn around and try to destroy Poilievre, because that's exactly what she did to Erin O'Toole. Right? When she lost that first election campaign, I think we read into the show one point that she was feeling very, very terrible, and Erin O'Toole basically took her in, and she described him as family almost. And then when Erin O'Toole made his run for the leadership, well, when he decided not to bring Jenny Byrne within his team because he was trying to be a little more centrist, well, apparently she got mad and then drew out the lasers and tried to obliterate him politically. So do you really think that out all the years that she's put in and invested into Pierre, if he suddenly dropped her from the team, that she wouldn't do to him what she did to Erin O'Toole? Does anyone really believe that? There's a reason she's staying, and it has nothing to do with her skills or abilities to win, is my opinion. While taking a step back since the election from liaising day to day with the leader of the opposition's office, Byrne is still very much in the picture, said a source close to Poilievre. Nothing has really changed. We're changing our tone. We're changing our strategy. Nothing has really changed. She's still around. Byrne is advising Poilievre on the upcoming Alberta by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. I guess that must be why he was campaigning in British Columbia. Oh, God. I'm so petty. And she's also advising him on the planned party convention in Calgary in the new year, a source said, including messaging and potential speakers for that event. There's work underway behind the scenes to ensure Poilievre holds off a leadership review. That review could be prompted by a vote at January's convention, which is being held earlier than it could have been. Under the party's constitution, a vote on triggering the leadership selection process must be held after an election loss, but there's no stipulation on when exactly it should take place. A convention in the dead of winter is unusual. Quote, "The sooner the better," said one Polyev advisor of the timing. "Why stretch it out? Let's get him in a strong position again." Yes, because the longer it would take, the more opportunities he has to keep running his mouth and reminding people why he's a bad choice. So let's do this quickly. The fear among some conservatives loyal to Polyev is that Carney could enjoy an extended honeymoon period with strong public polling support. Recent surveys suggest an outright majority of Canadians polled think Carney's government is off to a good start. Carney is easily the most preferred candidate for prime minister among those surveyed, according to other polls. There's a risk that a prolonged polling slump could make some partisans anxious about the party's future under Polyev. Polyev has to contend with a growing Western separatist movement in the upcoming by-election, a potentially tricky proposition for a leader with national ambitions. He has said in recent days the province is treated unfairly and its economy was, quote, viciously attacked by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Yes, viciously attacked with a $34 billion pipeline to Tidewater. And his father with their energy policies. Because, yes, Pierre Trudeau's father is worm food by now, but let's keep on raising his ghost. Quote, "We have to put a final end to this notion that Ottawa tells Alberta to pay up and shut up," he told reporters. Okay. The Conservative leader also faces the daunting task of matching or exceeding past Tory MP Damien Carrick's stunning nearly 83% of the vote in the riding, something party sources acknowledge is not likely in this summer's by-election. Oops. What party insiders are watching for is Pierre's margin of victory. If he pulls in a lot less than Kirk's share of the vote, it could spell trouble for Poilievre's leadership. What else could spell trouble for Poilievre's leadership is if fundraising numbers start to drip. Because Conservatives love those Bordens. Yum, 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 yum. So yeah, apparently, tonal shift. Well, kits and cubs. Some people were asked about this on Power and Politics. I would like to play one little clip here for you with regard to that, because I think it will everything here. In this clip, David Cochrane, the story here. Sorry, not David Cochrane. Sorry, my bad. J.P. Tasker, who wrote this article. And as you know, Kits and Cubs, the couple of first few times I saw him host Power and Politics, I got the sense from framing and all of that you're not supposed to be able to tell an actual journalist's political framing. But it seemed very clear that J.P. Tasker leans a little more conservative. And during this segment, how would I put it? The people around the table don't seem to have the same assessment that he does, that there is a tonal shift happening, number one. And number two, when he comes back and asks another question, he's pointing to things that he's noticed, and these things have happened, but you need more than just one or two data points, right, to say that a tonal shift has happened, right? Somebody can shift a tone for a day or two, but does it stick? And Pierre Polyev is on, I think, his third or fourth or fifth or sixth, I don't know how many makeovers now, and it never sticks. It never lasts more than a couple of days. So, Kits and Cubs, if you would, please enjoy this moment here that I have for you. You'll see what I mean when you hear it and see it.
Saying, does he have a point that's different than Carney's? We saw something in the House in June that we haven't seen in years, which was the Conservative support, the passing of the Liberal bill. So what does that look like in September? Is there a way for him to differentiate himself? What is he saying? Is it connecting with what people are feeling, or is it just more?
It seems that there was a typo in my note of the timestamp, unfortunately, Kits and Cubs. So sorry for that. and I have definitely put you at the wrong place. That is my bad. Definitely my bad there. So yeah, I don't know how I got that wrong, to be totally honest. So it's more at the beginning. Wow, I got that wrong by a lot, actually. uh, I must. Oh, I know it was wrong. Yes, sorry. It was the number from the live broadcast, and now that it's not live, the breaks for the commercials have been removed, so the timestamp is different. That was my bad. Okay, I believe I have it here for you, kits and cubs. Let's try that. There we go.
Stay with us. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre dialed back his public appearances after losing the spring federal election. Sources close to him told me he was taking time to reassess his strategy, and now he's making some tweaks. Poilievre faces a must-win by-election in just 1 month, hoping to return to the House of Commons with a seat in the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot. But for now, one thing that is not changing is his reliance on campaign advisor Jenny Byrne. Byrne has been a controversial figure among some Conservatives. She's advising Poilievre through the by-election and his upcoming leadership review. Let's bring in our panel of party insiders. Melanie Richer is a former communications director for the NDP. And here with me is Greg McEachran, a former Liberal ministerial advisor. And Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager. Nice to see all you guys on this Friday. Thanks for coming in. Nice to see you, Mel, too. Greg, the Conservative leader is apparently making a conscious effort to shift his tone and his strategy. Have you been seeing any evidence of that to this point?
So Mel and Fred and I were chatting. We've got some questions for you, JP. It's a great article that you've done. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. But when you said apparently, I think apparently is doing a lot of work in that sentence. And I just did a kind of a check during the election of how many times we saw articles about that he was going to pit or he was going to change tone, and then they resisted that. And I think this is gets to the heart of the challenge of trying to make changes. If you believe you've not done anything wrong, you don't want to change anything. And I think it's a sunk cost fallacy here, where it's hard for some people. It's hard for all of us to admit where we've done something wrong. But once you do, and you can mark that, you can then move on. You also learn from it. Look, in our corporate world, you know, when we've had mistakes in the past, and the teams that I've worked on, we found it the easiest way to kind of move on is you let the client, you let the individual know that the mistake was made. You've acknowledged it. You apologize. You can explain why it happened in that ways that you're going to prevent it from happening again. And they're not in this space. Like, I find it very interesting. I mean, Aaron Wary wrote about this in April. I saw it in the Toronto Star. Is he changing? Is he not? But less than 2 weeks ago, he was at the Calgary Stampede, and he started to say, I want to be nonpartisan and welcome Mark Carney. And then he made fun of the way he flipped a pancake. And if you're trying to look at this guy in terms of how he would deal with Trump, he actually sounds like Trump. In the big picture of everything that's going on right now in the world and in Canada with our trade issues, you want to talk about pancake flipping? No one is taking you seriously. So not to take anything away from your article, I know you're reporting what you're hearing and being told, and Steph Levitz earlier this week in the Globe had, you know, there was a rumor going around that Jenny Byrne was done, and this is your job. You need to report this, but I'll believe it when I see it.
I mean, Fred, there has been some...
So, if you caught that, kits and cubs, Greg McEachran, not being able to suppress a chuckle or a guffaw on the statement here that Pierre has somewhat changed. Now, JP Tasker, bless his heart, tried to defend the position, you know, what he saw, and, you know, could this not be a plausible thing? And Delory doesn't really confirm, Delory doesn't go as far as McEachran as saying that, you know, Pierre's doesn't seem to be changing much, but doesn't also admit that Pierre has. And then Melanie Richet from the NDP, who's the other person on the panel, then turns around and mentions that that in her sense, she does see Pierre as more as deflated and defeated, dejected a little bit there. The topic then moves. Um, oh yeah, it's true. I can't use that. I was going to move to the next timestamp, but that's wrong too because they cut out the commercials. So I won't be able to find that for you as easily on the fly as I would have liked. But yes, they then go into the whole discussion afterwards, after about Jenny Byrne, and uh, whether or not that she's going to be an asset or not to the future bit of the campaign, which I'm going to skip over because you don't need to see me trying to stretch as I'm listening, watching the clip on with closed captions on to try to find the spot where they start speaking about her. But yes, they're suggesting, or the Conservatives are trying to suggest here, that there's a tonal shift happening and that they are a government in waiting. Well, yesterday, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives chose to do something that seems to indicate that this is not at all a serious attempt. In fact, Greg McEachern, who we just saw the news story covering it, and his take on it was so much reflecting, so much learning, so much for the tone change, and uh, that was exactly our take on it too when we saw it, and it all started with Pierre Poilievre putting out a tweet because there's something happening very soon. I think it's tomorrow. Tomorrow, the sentencing hearing for Chris Barber and Tamara Lich starts. And it's supposed to go until probably early August, and then we'll get the final sentence. Well, it seems that Crown prosecutors have submitted their documentation and sentencing recommendations for this. And they have recommended that Tamara Lich be sentenced to 7 years and Chris Barber be sentenced to 8. Those are some pretty healthy sentences. Now, again, they were convicted on just one of the many charges, and was a mischief charge, I believe, that they were convicted. And again, you have people going, "Oh God, mischief, mischief, mischief," because you hear mischief and you just think about like stuff like graffiti or whatnot. But there are different types of mischief, right? There's mischief that causes property damage of under $5,000, over $5,000, and then there is mischief that can cause bodily harm and death. And each of them have different sentences, and mischief that causes death has a maximum sentence of life in prison. So you have all these social media people going, "Oh my God, mischief, it's just mischief. It's not like," and then they compare something to Palestinians, or they compare them to Indigenous people, or it's not like it was fentanyl, or it's not like, or then you have a lot of people, "Well, gee, what, they were charged for protesting? 7 years for protesting?" That's not what they're charged with. That wasn't the conviction, wasn't protesting. What did they even do? Like pretending they don't know, right? So you got this whole campaign going on. And you have a lot of people on the other side going, "Hey, Pierre, where are you with your jail, not bail?" Especially for these two. All of a sudden, they're Mr. I'm going to override your charter rights in order to enforce the law. You seem to be really quiet on them too. Where's your jail, not bail? Where's your jail, not bail? And then you got some other people, "Oh, well, he's not interfering in a case. What about that? Do you not understand?" And then suddenly, yesterday, all the people who allegedly got all apoplectic about Justin Trudeau as SNC started doing this, kits and cubs. And again, Pierre led off, or how do I put it? It seems that Pierre is the one that launched it all. But of course, there was lots of more grumbling as soon as the news of the sentencing recommendation had come out. But Pierre decided to tweet this, quote, "Let's get this straight. While rampant violent offenders are released hours after their most recent charges and anti-Semitic rioters vandalize businesses, terrorize daycares, and block traffic without consequences, the Crown wants 7 years prison time for charge of mischief for Litch and Barber. How is this justice?" So much for not wanting to interfere in an active case, right? Because now there are editorials in the National Post suggesting, quote, "Michael Higgins locking Tamara Litch up for 7 years would be shameful retribution." Shameful retribution. They're political prisoners. And now you've got not only Pierre doing it, but according to the Canadian press, Sarah Ritchie and Craig Lord, Poilievre and Conservative MPs publicly support Freedom Convoy organizers ahead of sentencing. Several Conservative MPs are criticizing the Crown's approach to prosecuting 2 key organizers of the Freedom Convoy protests, with the party's deputy leader calling it an act of political vengeance. Our legal system, apparently, when you go through it, and the Crown makes a sentencing recommendation, that's political vengeance now. Tamara Litch and Chris Barber were convicted of mischief in April for their roles in organizing the demonstration which blockaded streets around Parliament Hill for more than 3 weeks in early 2022. Barber was also convicted of counseling others to disobey a court order. They were found not guilty of several charges, including counseling others to commit mischief. A sentencing hearing for Barber and Litch is scheduled to take place in Ottawa on Wednesday. Litch has posted on social media that the Crown is seeking a sentence of 7 years for her and 8 years for Barber. She posted a screenshot of part of the Crown's submission to the judge, which called their actions, quote, "the worst case of mischief," and argued the right to political expression has never existed without limitations. The Canadian press has not independently verified the screenshot. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre posted on X Monday to question the Crown's approach, which is the tweet that I just read to you. And in her own social media post, Deputy Conservative leader Melissa Lantsman said, quote, that if, quote, "the Crown suddenly wants to apply the law, equal application of the law would be a good start. But this is political vengeance, not actual justice, and it's why trust in our institutions is dwindling." Ontario Conservative MP Andrew Lawton called the proposed sentencing range excessive and vindictive. The Crown is seeking a 7-year sentence, 8 for Chris, for a 3-week peaceful protest. If it was a 3-week peaceful protest, there never would have been charges, even less a conviction. Almost 3.5 years ago, because yes, how long ago it happened should have any bearing on the sentence. All while violent offenders are given slaps on the wrists, Lawton said. Saskatchewan MP Jeremy Patzer described the proposed sentence as, quote, 7 to 8 years for holding the line and causing Justin Trudeau a political emergency. And no, that's not what they were charged with. That's not what they were convicted of. It's not 7 years for that. He compared it to a case in which a man was given a conditional discharge for trying to buy sex from someone he believed was 15 years old. Quote, "It's pretty clear what the Liberals' priorities are. Conservatives are the ones proposing to fix our law so that the real criminals end up behind bars. No, I believe the Conservatives were the ones that were proposing overriding fundamental constitutional rights in order to keep people that they personally find distasteful in jail longer." A spokesperson from Poilievre's office said in a statement that MPs, quote, "are raising concerns because the sentencing sought by the Crown in this particular case appears completely disproportionate, particularly when compared to violent criminals who have gotten away with a mere slap on the wrist." And when they say violent criminals, that's code for people who are not white. The Conservatives ran on Tough on Crime platform in the April election. Poilievre promised jail, not bail, for repeat offenders. Boy, did they repeat. Tamara and Chris repeated and repeated and repeated. over nearly 4 weeks, right? If we're talking about repeat offenders. Just saying. And pledged to legislate life sentences for some human trafficking and drug offenses, promises that constitutional experts said would almost certainly be struck down by the courts. Monday's social media posts came after a number of prominent right-wing social media influencers and personalities called out Poilievre and his MPs over their alleged lack of support for Litch and Barber. Litch and Barber have been greeted by vocal supporters at each of their court appearances, and Litch's posts had thousands of likes and comments on Monday. Michael Spratt, an Ottawa-based defense lawyer, called the MP's decision to weigh in on the proposed sentencing craven politics. Quote, "It is very dangerous for politicians to be weighing in on matters before the court," he said. Spratt said there is a long-standing convention that politicians must not impose their views on the judicial system in Canada. Oh, again, shades of SNC. But sometimes politicians step over that line. In 2021, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said that it was, quote, "beyond comprehension that the suspect in a homicide case involved the death of a Toronto police officer had been granted bail." The accused was found not guilty in 2024. Spratt said politicians who were critical of the justice system at the time ended up looking foolish when the facts of the case came out. Politicians who choose to leverage high-profile cases to advance a political narrative ultimately end up devaluing the work of the courts, Spratt said. The spokesperson for Poilievre's office says that MPs are exercising their freedom to raise concerns about the disproportionate sentencing in the justice system. Yes, because if you protest what Israel's doing in Palestine, you should be thrown in jail, locked away, or even deported or have your citizenship revoked. But it's all right if you're alt-white to occupy a city for nearly 4 weeks and torture residents with sound, intimidate people walking by, have a group of people propose a manifesto that very strongly suggests overthrowing the government. Among all the other things, the urination, the defecation, the storing propane tanks next to things that could go boom, your public infrastructure. But yes, it was peaceful and the love in what crimes were committed. I can't believe it was only for protesting, they say here. Quote, "It's the job of the opposition to raise questions about consistency and proportionality in the criminal justice system, including sentencing law and policy illuminated by specific cases," the spokesperson said. Yeah, but not while the case is before the courts. Afterwards. Spratt said the conservative criticism undersells the nature of the offenses. Though the charge, quote, "is mischief, this isn't an instance like a child misbehaving," Spratt argued. The case involves two organizers of a demonstration that cost millions of dollars and caused real harm to thousands of downtown Ottawa residents, he said. In delivering the guilty verdicts, Ontario Court Justice Heather Perkins McVeigh said Litch and Barber routinely encouraged people to join or remain at the protest, even though they knew the effect it was having on people and businesses downtown. Basically, depraved indifference. Thousands of protesters, vehicles, and big trucks converged on downtown Ottawa in early 2022 in opposition to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, vaccine mandates, and the government of then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The demonstrators refused to leave the downtown, with many honking their truck horns at all hours, even after a court injunction ordered them to stop. Residents in the area complained of being harassed and said the smell of diesel fumes was overwhelming. Poilievre was supportive of the protesters during the demonstration. He brought coffee and donuts to some of the truckers and called them the honest, hardworking, decent people in a February 2022 video taken outside Parliament. And then suddenly, when they became unpopular, threw them under a bus and pretended like he didn't know them. Now, all of a sudden, now that he's running a by-election in Battle River Crowfoot, a place in Alberta that's very strongly conservative and that has a very a significant portion of people who are pro-separatism, while all of a sudden he's taking up their cause again because Pierre uses people. He used them to launch his unofficial bid to become prime minister. And then when it became inconvenient, he threw them under a bus. And then he used the residents of Carleton to have a backdrop for his bid to be prime minister. And then he lost his job. So then he moved on to another host the residents of Battle River Crowfoot, who he's using to get back into Parliament. And now that it seems that Bonnie Critchley is getting a little momentum, and Pierre seems that he might be a little concerned about either his chances of winning or at least his chances of winning by enough margin to be able to keep his job. All of a sudden, he's hitching his little blue wagon to Litch and Barber again. He uses people. That's what he does. He uses people. Some of the people involved in the protest said they wanted to overthrow the government. Poilievre said at the time that the truckers should not be disparaged as a group for the views of certain individuals. The protest was eventually broken up by a massive police operation. The Trudeau government invoked the Emergencies Act for the first time in the country's history. And then, right, the article goes on and then says, Spratt said outside comments are not likely to change the judge's opinion on a possible sentence for Litch and Barber. Quote, this judge in particular is not going to make a decision one way or the other because Pierre Poilievre decided he'd hop on social media and express his opinion. However, we need to call this what it is. This is an online pressure campaign, an attempt to influence the judge in delivering a lighter sentence. Now, it is relatively rare that a judge will give the maximum that the Crown requests. I think the odds of them being sentenced to 7 and 8 years, respectively, are probably a little small. The Crown usually asks for a whole lot more and get often significantly less. Often. But this is a shameless, bald-faced attempt to create public pressure to attempt to influence a judge prior to delivering the sentencing. This is way worse. Way, way worse than anything that they got beside themselves about with regard to the Prime Minister and SNC. And this seems to be a habit for the Conservatives, right? Federal and provincial. You had Danielle Smith taking that call from Archer Pawlowski. And then you had, Conservatives on the campaign said that they wanted to interfere with sentencing, by recommending sentencing that would already be deemed unconstitutional and using the notwithstanding clause to override it. And then you have the Conservatives running in front of the media every time that there's a bail sentencing hearing. Not bail sentencing hearing, sorry. A parole board hearing for any prisoner that's been controversial, even though they know that there's probably no chance that Paul Bernardo will ever be released. They still go out and say, oh my God, I can't believe that we have a parole hearing. He might be released. This is so terrible. Why are we doing that? Or when a prisoner gets moved from a higher security to a lower security. The Conservatives are always trying to interfere somehow with the legal system and influence it. In Alberta, we also had the case of 2 people who had, if I'm not mistaken, hired people to trail a judge. 2 Alberta lawyers, Jay Cameron and John Carpe, hired a private investigator to follow Manitoba Judge Glenn Joyal, who presided over their case challenging COVID-19 restrictions. Conservatives, allegedly law and order conservatives, have a very, very, very active recent past of inserting themselves in many spots throughout the legal process. But they're law and order conservatives. And when you go back to that article that we just read, when I told you to put a pin in the statement about Pierre Poilievre stating that the Conservatives needed to show that they were a government in waiting, that they needed that tonal shift, that they have eaten humble pie? Does a tweet like that jive with we need to present ourselves as a government in waiting? Those are the words that Pierre has used. Does a government in waiting, upon hearing a sentencing recommendation on the part of the Crown, typically go out and use its influence to try to pressure the judge to deliver a lesser sentence? Is that the act of a government of waiting? Is that the act of a Conservative Party under Pierre Poilievre that appears to be changing tone to indicate that they are a government in waiting? See, the problem with all the Pierre's makeovers and promised tonal shifts is that they don't last. They don't happen. He doesn't mean them. He can't pivot. He can't change. He doesn't want to learn because, as Craig McEachern just said, he thinks that what he did is working for him. He thinks that his loss is merely a speed bump on the way to becoming Prime Minister. There will be no tonal change. Not from this guy, not from this party, so long as this guy is at the top and not so long as Jenny Byrne is there. There will be no tonal change. And it is really hilarious to see some journalists saying, well, you know, like this, when Poilievre was asked about Carney and Trump, you know, he didn't turn around and said, oh my God, it's all Carney's fault. He said, well, you know, you are dealing well. Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, Pierre would have looked ridiculous if he was said it was all Carney's fault. Everybody in Canada has eyes and ears and can see Trump and see how he behaves. And it's not like we haven't had a long-ass look at him over the last decade. That impression is pretty much baked in. I'm not sure it's particularly magnanimous to agree once to acknowledge reality as it is. But yeah, when the two leaders of the convoy are about to be sentenced and you decide to insert yourself, and then a whole bunch of other MPs from your party decide to insert themselves, and then the entire media machine that is pro your party decides to insert itself, don't then come and try to sell me that you've had a realization, that you've learned something from the election, and that you are going to change tone to prove, of all things, that you are a government in waiting. Girl, please. A makeover is never going to work with Pierre, and a tonal shift is never going to work with Pierre because there's nothing authentic about the man other than his dickishness. He does not know who he is, or he does not like who he is, which is why he keeps on trying on different skins, and he can't stick with one. Because Pierre knows he cannot win being himself. He's trying to be what his base wants / needs / wishes he would be in order to win. And Pierre is not that. He will never be that. It will always come across as fake and phony because it is. Pierre cannot human. It's not in his repertoire. It just isn't. And being collegial and congenial is also not in his repertoire. It's not going to happen. Journalists, please stop writing these pieces that another tone shift is coming, that they're going to learn. This time for real now. It's never going to happen. We've seen this guy in action for over 20 years. It has not happened yet. It is not going to happen. All right. Last but not least, kits and cubs. Yesterday was the first of a 3-day meeting between the premiers to discuss the path forward with regard to nation building, building projects of a national importance and of large scale and large scope. And the first day of the meeting, had to do more with getting to know and setting the stage for what is to come next when it comes to dealing with Indigenous communities. Um, as you know, Kits and Cubs, C5 passed, Bill 5 passed in Ontario. There's bills 14 and 15 in British Columbia, and those together have raised a bit of ire, as well as a joint letter from the ministers of the environment of the province of Alberta and Ontario, indicating to the Indigenous community that once again, it seems that they're being set up to be exploited and used. They did not appreciate the manner in which Bill C5 federally went through, with absolutely no participation in the drafting of the bill, very little opportunity to intervene in the amendment process, even though making it very clear that they had some issues with it, and then having very little involvement in the organization of the summits that are taking place in order to consult with them, which seem hastily organized as a damage control exercise. And then getting to the summits and finding out that there's the balance of government officials talking at them versus them talking with them and having them listen is somewhat off. And we wondered whether or not Prime Minister Carney might have a blind spot when it comes to that. Well, it would seem that, based on what I've seen so far, that members of Indigenous communities who were invited to the Muskokas for this meeting. Now, of course, there are some issues here because remember, the ITK, Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, were invited and decided to pass on it because there were other groups invited who claimed to represent the Inuit, that they consider that claim to be fraudulent and therefore did not show up in protest. But for everyone else that was there, it would appear that the meeting was very, very, very positive, which is good and refreshing to hear, particularly because we had that whole incident with Doug Ford as well, who made that very, 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 very horrible statement about Indigenous people showing up cap in hand, but still saying no to projects. And then delivered an apology, allegedly, that was sincere. And then it was not that long later that his Minister of the Environment did write that letter, asking the federal government to not pass federal legislation assuring potable water on reserve and protection of fresh waterways. Well, AFN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak was at the event in the Muskokas, and their conversation, she had this to say, which I have to say, when I heard it, my jaw dropped a little.
Ministers meeting with Indigenous leaders at the table.
Absolutely, I consider this progress. I'm glad that the premiers had agreed that we do have to have tough discussions with each other. They're not always going to be easy, but it's so important that we work together and sit at the same tables equally.
So what happened here? I think I cut off Mr. David Cochrane speaking, but what happened is that the premiers, all of them, suggested that there should be a meeting that had premiers and Indigenous leadership together, which is very interesting because this is on the show something we suggested should have happened in Regina when the first meeting with the Prime Minister and the premiers happened. To have those sorry, I'm having trouble speaking today, to have Indigenous leadership around the table at that particular moment. So when they were pitching these ideas and making these broad categories, that they would have been there pitching their own initiatives and their own ideas. That did not happen. And then the Prime Minister had another meeting with them, I think virtually, and that did not happen then. And there's this third meeting now that's happening that now they are invited for day one. And it looks like at a future meeting, they will be there at the table. Now, I'm not sure whether or not the Prime Minister's office happened to call all of the premiers following the summit on Friday, which again was not a failure, but far from a stellar success, because some people walked out. Some people expressed cautious optimism, but some people walked out. And the Prime Minister is apparently on record, as we said yesterday, as saying that he's not open to amendments to Bill C-5, but did say that something like if the provinces are dragging, we will raise them up. So I'm not sure if anybody from the PMO called all of the premiers and said, when you are doing that first day of that meeting, propose this. But it seems everybody around the table was pretty much unanimous that this would be a good idea. I'm not going to complain. I think it's a great idea. I'm just surprised that there was such agreement around the table. I want to present to you a little bit of one or two clips here. This is Victoria Pruden, who is now the new leader of Métis National Council. As you know, Cassidy Caron, who we had as a guest on the show, stepped down. She's having a family and decided that she wanted to spend more time taking care of that. So we have a new leader of the Métis National Council. And, let's just get, I want to present to you her impressions a bit of how the day went and what it is that she noticed. So Kits and Cubs, this is the first time we are seeing her on the show, but this is, again, Victoria, if I'm not, I want to make sure I get the name right here, Pruden, who is now the president of the Métis National Council.
Métis National Council President Victoria Pruden joins me now with her take on that meeting. President Pruden, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Excellent. My pleasure. Good to be here.
We heard from the AFN National Chief, Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak. She has a pretty optimistic view of the meeting, acknowledging there's a lot of work to do. No one's saying it's all done, but acknowledging that there's going to be, or at least there's a willingness for a First Ministers meeting that includes treaty holders, Section 35 groups. What's your reaction to that?
Excellent. I had very much the same takeaway. We were really encouraged by the collaborative tone of the meeting. There was strong motivation amongst the premiers to uphold Indigenous rights and support Indigenous-led economic growth. And we're particularly excited and also extending our thanks to Premier Wabkanu of Manitoba for moving forward, bringing the idea to the table for that First Ministers meeting to include Section 35 Indigenous rights-holding governments and nations.
So that was Premier Canu's pitch today?
Premier Canu's pitch, and I have to say that there was collaborative acceptance in the room, and we're very thankful to Premier Ford, who's agreed to take that forward to Prime Minister Mark Carney, perhaps as early as this evening in conversation. And we heard some really collaborative examples and supports around the room. Premier Danielle Smith, Premier Scott Moe from Saskatchewan, and in conversation with other in particular territorial premiers, some very encouraging words today.
Is this what you expected? Because, you know, we watched the AFN meeting with the Prime Minister last week, and I know it's a different group, but broadly it's the same conversation in a different forum. And, you know, there was some frustration, quite a bit of frustration that came out of that meeting with the AFN. Were you surprised to see such collegiality in there and a willingness to move things to a full First Minister's meeting involving you?
I went in with just very open expectations, and certainly felt very encouraged about how everyone got to the table today. I think there'll be a real opportunity for the elected leaders of Section 35 recognized Métis governments to participate, of course, in the upcoming Métis Summit with Prime Minister Mark Carney, but also at this First Minister's meeting that's being proposed. There's a lot of potential there. I mean, as you mentioned and as National Chief mentioned, there may still be some things to iron out, but I think it's a very positive opportunity.
Well, we don't yet know if the Prime Minister will say yes. I'm going to guess it'd be very difficult for him to say no after all of the premiers and have agreed to it, and you're on board, the AFN is on board. I would assume Nathan Obed and the ITK would very much support something like this, depending on its composition.
So there we go, kids and cubs, on that. Some very positive views with regard to what has happened. Of course, here, according to the president of the Métis National Council, the suggestion came from Premier Wab Kinew. Again, probably Canada's best premier at the moment, but that everybody signed on. Again, don't know if the Prime Minister and Mr. Kinew had a little conversation before this suggestion came up at the table, but I like the idea if we are going to behave like we are negotiating nation to nation, and we are talking about treaty and rights holders and not just mere stakeholders, then why should they not be at the table as nations alongside with the provinces, right? If provinces and the federal government are going to be determining, making decisions about projects that are going to either pass through their territory or affect them, even if they don't pass through their territory, why would they not be at the table at the moment that those projects are being pitched? And why wouldn't they not be there with some projects of their own to pitch? Right? So this is all very positive in my estimation. And like I said, I did not expect this coming out of the first day of the summit. The next clip I want to show you is a little bit of her talking about some stuff that is specific, for those of you who are not familiar, specific to how the Métis are organized. So it's a little bit of a civics piece to it, because there's a difference between the Métis National Council and the AFN, other groups, in terms of how they operate.
There's still the broader question, though, of C5 and the goal to fast-track projects, the frustration there, the concerns about the collision of, you know, this industrial agenda with treaty rights, with traditional rights. I mean, are your concerns getting eased by any of this, because it is still hanging out there as an unresolved issue?
And I think just generally, from where I'm sitting, the Métis National Council, as you know, it's not a government. We've never been a government. We don't purport to be a government. However, I'm really encouraged to see what happens when elected leaders of Métis governments sit down with Prime Minister Mark Carney at the Métis Summit, and we'll see how those talks go and what kind of priorities emerge from what I've heard and what, you know, the conversations that we've had from our governing member Métis governments. There's a general goal of balancing both economic opportunity for the benefit of Métis governments and their citizens, and upholding the need for duty to consult, the need to balance environmental and climate change concerns. So I think we're hearing the same priorities and some of the same struggles.
There were some of the conversations I had with chiefs, though, who came out of the AFM meeting last week. there was an absence of trust, a real lack of trust. And look, I get it historically in the context and why there would be profound skepticism. Do you have a lack of trust in this Prime Minister and this process, or do you get a sense that Mark Carney is trying to do the right thing here? Because that is going to matter, it seems to me, in this conversation, if mutual respect for competing interests are going to be preserved.
I think, again, from my perspective, in the conversations that I've been a party to date, definitely some encouraging expectations. Again, at the Métis Summit, Prime Minister Carney's going to have that opportunity to sit with elected Métis leaders of Section 35 recognized Métis governments. Let's see how that goes and where those elected leaders, how they feel after that opportunity to really dig in and talk about C5.
Right.
So there you go, kits and cubs. Some expressed optimism there from the National Chief of the AFN and the President of the Métis National Council in terms of moving forward. As we mentioned, the next two of those three summits, the first one is taking place this Thursday with Inuit communities at the Circumpolar Conference that will be taking place on Thursday. And it seems that the prospective date, according to President of the Métis National Council, Pruden, is that the session with the Métis community is scheduled for August 7th or thereabouts. Hasn't been fully confirmed, but that's the date that they are looking at the moment. So we'll see on Thursday whether or not there were any lessons learned from Friday that are applied to that meeting. And then we'll see going forward what happens with this initiative. But this is good. This is very good. It would be I believe it would probably be the first time that there have been such a meeting. And hopefully that might be a template for the future, that when the Prime Minister is meeting with the premiers, that Indigenous leadership for all three groups, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, are there at the meeting as well. And that it is looked at in that sense. So rather than 13 people around the table, usually at least 16. So that all voices are there and that everybody is there at the ground floor when ideas are being pitched and when brainstorming is happening and processes are being set up in the first place. Would be a very welcome change in the way that we do things, and would be a step closer to walking down that path for further truth and reconciliation hand in hand together, as opposed to us preparing our offers all on our side and then coming to them with things that are ready and saying, okay, how do you fit into this? And let's find a way for you to fit into this that you feel comfortable with, rather than, hey, why don't you help us shape it from the get-go? I like the latter initiative a whole lot better. Takes a little more time to get to a consensus or to get to a final decision as to what it is that one is going to do. But once that decision is made, everybody feels invested in it because everybody had their say and everybody had their contribution, and it smoothens out the actual execution phase of it. So again, we're microdosing on hope here, and that was an unexpected turn. I did not expect to get any news whatsoever, especially given all the tensions, particularly with Ontario and Alberta, that they would turn around and say, hey, let's have a more inclusive meeting structure. Hopefully it won't be just a one-time thing. Well, kits and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, so please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, and when you share something and include a little something of your own. That helps us a whole lot more. We can't buy that type of advertising, and you are influencers in your circle, so it helps us out immensely. Kits and cubs, if you're on the go and very, very busy, don't necessarily have time to listen to us live, well, hey, we've got a solution for you. We're portable. thanks to the Ray Curl, if you go to our pod page, that's podpage.com/the-true-north-eager-beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And if you click on subscribe, or if you scan this QR code that just appeared on the screen if you're watching now, that will take you to the pod page. You click on subscribe, and when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. Our ears-only version, take us with you when you need to go somewhere. And that way, you'll always be informed, and you will be able to get through your busy day as well. Kids and Cubs, if you'd like to help us in other ways, well, maybe you would like to surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver YouTube page where Kits, Cassie, and Elaine are beckoning you and welcoming you with open arms, asking you to click with our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little click. It helps us with the algorithm, and it also brings us a little bit of happy. So thank you for all your help with that. And if you would like to help us in other ways, Kits and Cubs, by making a generous contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where every day we fight the scourge that is dry beaver. Such a terrible thing. A couple of coins in our tip jar when it hits the bottom brings us so much joy. And we very much thank you for being so supportive of what we do and encouraging us to do more with your contribution. We thank you and hope that if you have not donated yet, that at some point you will feel compelled to, because you do like our show and would like to encourage us to do more. But if you're not able to donate, please do not worry, because the gifts of your attention and your participation are the ones that matter most to us, and we love to hear from you. So please write to us. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. You can also use that address to send us a direct donation if you're buying Canadian and bypassing the US CE Tech Pros. But if you want to talk to us about the show, give us a compliment, some constructive feedback, have a guest suggestion, anything of the sort, please use that email address. We love to hear from you. And if you want to reach us through our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home, or if you happen to be listening on YouTube, either live right now with the DAMFAM or later at your own convenience, right down here in the comments section, leave us a little something. We read absolutely everything, even though we're not able to answer everyone. And all your contributions, whether they be in words or in loonies and toonies, do go back into the show to make it better, and we thank you for all of your support. Because democracy is something that you do, Kits and Cubs, this is the last day to sign the petition. Very, very important if you would like Canada to have a disability commissioner as a federal officer that reports back to Parliament. I'm surprised that we didn't already have one, but we do not, and it's definitely something that Canada needs. So if you would go to ourcommons.ca and look up petition E-6488. Today is the last day to affix your signature to it. And hopefully there will be enough signatures for Leah Gazan to be able to table it in the House, and hopefully for the petition to go somewhere. And hopefully one day we will have a disability commissioner, because I think that would be beneficial to the nation as a whole, as 1 in 4 Canadians are disabled, and all of us are just one bad accident or bad life event away from joining them. So it would be very good to have an officer of Parliament that does speak on behalf of the community. Also, mypcalberta.ca. Please sign there to make sure that the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta can be registered with Elections Alberta, so that if you are an Albertan, you have more choice when it comes to who is going to govern you when the next provincial election comes along. Words of wisdom, Kits and Cubs. You know what? Mr. Grizzly's so much better at this than I am. I do so much talking that by the time I get to the words of wisdom, I don't really have any. But Kits and Cubs, words of wisdom, I would say, a healthy dose of skepticism sometimes is not necessarily a bad thing. And I'll just leave it with that. Kits and Cubs, please be kind to and gentle with yourselves. And now, if I may, have everybody on the count of 3, give me a Mr. Beaver. Please cue the cock. On 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes. So very nice. Thank you so much. Here you go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. And Kits and Cubs, before we go, a little bit of Canadians who make us proud. I don't know what was going on with the light, by the way, Kits and Cubs today. I was washed out for a lot of the show. It seems that the sun has slightly moved behind something, and all of a sudden, we can see me again. But yes, I saw the comments. It looks like I was going to the light or something. But yeah, it just happens, right? I need to probably get darker curtains because the window's like literally right in front of me when I do the show, and that's why you see all the sun and the changes in light from my end. Hopefully, it doesn't distract from the enjoyment of the show. But when we're talking about Canadians who make us proud, we have a couple of people to chat to you about again. Another tennis player. This is Liam Drexel. We've mentioned him on the show a couple of times, but he has gone 13 wins and 2 losses in his last 15 matches, making the final at an event in Kerry in the United States, winning an event here in Winnipeg, and making the final at an event in Granby. And those wins together have brought him to a career high of 112th in the world, so close to the top 100. Hopefully he can get in there in the next few weeks, which would give him a direct direct access to the US Open in the main draw. But if not, that is certainly going to be enough to get him a spot in the qualification draw. So another up-and-coming tennis player. Also at an event in Washington, Victoria Mboko, who we talked about a lot, was gifted a wild card in order to be able to enter the main draw. She wouldn't have normally qualified based on her ranking alone, and made the most of it, winning her first match, defeating someone who was higher ranked than her to go to the second round. Unfortunately, in the second round, she's facing the tournament's number 3 seed, and Leila Fernandez is once again being the victim of getting horrible draws this season. It's been happening left, right, and center for her. But she did win her first match, but her second round match is against the tournament's number 1 player, Jessica Pegula, who's a top 5 player in the world. So it might be a short run for both Canadians in Washington, but you never know. Surprises can happen. Upsets can happen. Pegula was upset pretty early at Wimbledon, so you never know. But we wish our Canadian players the best of luck. And additionally, talking about our basketball players, our women's under 19 team was at the Basketball World Championships and played very, very, very well. Was in the semifinal against Australia, but lost to play for the bronze medal match, and unfortunately ended up in 4th place, losing to Spain by 1 single basket, 2 points in a very, very close match. So basically 3 points away, one field goal, I guess they call it in basketball, away from the bronze medal, but still an absolutely wonderful performance from our under 19s. And we give them a big round of applause. Finally, the last thing I would want to mention, given that, we are a little over time, we talk about things that make us proud, and we often focus on athletes and artists because that's a little more obvious. But there are other things that happen in Canada. Sometimes it's our scientists, sometimes it's people from the medical world, sometimes it's an entrepreneur, and sometimes it's something from our history. And July 20th, which was on the weekend, marked 20 years of same sex marriage being a reality in Canada. And I remember when those votes happened in the law. And I remember how close it was a vote and how contentious it was, but that a lot of people, public opinion was getting better, but wasn't as it is today. So it was still taking a risk for a lot of politicians at that time to make the decision. But there's a really interesting graphic in this article here that I want to show you. And it's normally legislation doesn't necessarily change minds. Legislation happens and then minds change gradually after. And this did happen when it comes to same sex marriage. It grew in acceptance the more it became a thing. But it's really amazing how quickly opinion turned the minute it became legal. And I will show you this graphic here. So this is select public opinion polls on same-sex marriage. And basically from 1996 on, there was slight favoring of legal same-sex marriage. So for the 9 years preceding it actually becoming law. But the instant it became law, boom, support just increased. And latest numbers show that that they have here, 1993, we're looking at almost 80% support from the Canadian public for same-sex marriage as more people see us married and living our lives and, having the same problems and issues that everybody else has. And us being able to share about them and. So, yeah, 20 years of same-sex marriage in Canada, yet another reason I am very, very, very proud to be Canadian. And I hope that's a reason that you are as well. All right, kits and cubs, amour et bisous. And we will see you tomorrow. And hopefully we'll have a segment from Mr. Grizzly to be able to show you. And I'll be able to give you an update at how things are going with him at his new workplace. Okay? We will see you soon.